Stand by for action.
Hey guys, and welcome back. So what we're going to do this time is I'm going to look at doing one of the projects that I've had in for a wee while that I was waiting for bits that have all turned up, and I've cleaned up a few other bits and pieces. So we're going to build a cool new project, and to go along with my new channel I started, it is on the Spectra video. So you may have heard of it, you may have seen it in some of the channels, and it is the Spectra Video Pico. So this is the Pico expander that plugs into the port on the back of the Spectra Video 328, and unfortunately I think it does have to be the 328 to work. It just needs the extra RAM and that the 318 doesn't have, but that may change in time. What we'll do is we'll switch over and I'll take you to the website so you can see some information on it, and then we will come over onto the bench and we'll start going through the bits and pieces and making one of these. Alright, so grab yourself a drink, a few tasty little snacks, and that comfy chair, and let's get building. Okay guys, so here we are. This is the web page for Fitch and his SVI 3x8 Pico expander. It says it's for the 318-328, but I think in some of the documentation a lot of it won't work very well unless you have a 328. So just be wary of that. It uses the Raspberry Pi Pico 2W, and this is the purple one from what I gather. There is information on here we can read through to tell us all that, but this is what the machine will actually give you. So it is for a 318 and 218 computers, and the device emulates when plugged into a 3x8 expansion port up to 96k of additional RAM with RAM banking for bank 21, 22 and 31, and this is to the 328, and up to 144k more RAM to the 318. So what it is the 328 has its 64k, and this adds another 96 to it to take it up to the total of 190 something. I can't quite remember now. The 318, because it's only 16k internally, it gives it more. It gives it 144k to take it up to the maximum available. And this allows it to be more like a 328 than anything else. It also emulates a disk drive, but only one at this stage. They are working on doing two. They are also working on, somebody in the Spectra Video fraternity found one of the 605Cs or 605D, I think it is, which is the one that had the hard drive in it, which is very, very rare. And they're back engineering it to see if it'll work with the Pico, and then you'll be able to use it for storing images and stuff on like a large drive. They weren't very big. I think the original ones back in their day were a 5 meg or at the most a 10 meg drive, but anything is better than nothing. So anyway, it uses the disk images and it can load it over Wi-Fi, and that's why you need the W Pico cards, the two Ws. It does cassette drive emulation of CAS files with auto running, allowing you to send and run CAS files over Wi-Fi as well. It supports up to a 64K ROM game cartridge, of which there were few, but with a lot of home brews coming out at the moment, there are some 64K home brew cartridges that are coming out. It has save states for saving to your computer states and to load it back at later. So this is for games, obviously. And it also has a remote launch, allowing you to pick a game image from a PC or Mac and launch it from the Spectra video via Wi-Fi as well. So there's quite a lot of cool features, and there's a few images of it. I will put pictures up for you guys. As I said, the limitations at this stage is that support is only for one disk drive. 2 drives is coming up, but it just takes time to get that implemented. Then it goes on a little bit about the project. They're up to version 1.4 of the PCBs. The software is 1.4.2. And as I say, just remember this is cutting edge, bleeding edge technology, and just be aware that some things may not work very well. Then we come down to a quick start guide about programming the Nano and setting everything up, commands for running the server, etc. And inside this GitHub repo there is documentation on telling you how to set everything up and to do everything you need. This is open source at this stage, with the caveat of not doing commercial sales and commercial batches. If you wish to do that, then you need to actually contact Flitch and ask him and see if he'll grant you a license to do it. Alright, so this is mainly the project we'll be working on, so I will now switch you back and we will go on to the desktop and go from there. So guys, there you go. That's what we're going to be doing. So that is the SV3X8 Pico expander. We're going to now just switch over to the overhead and pull out all the bits we need and make a start on this. I do have everything I need here. The only thing I have to have a look for is my edge connector. I've got some floating around. I just have to make sure I know where I've put them. But that's the only part I don't have physically waiting to go into these. And so we'll switch over to the desktop and go from there. So guys, here we are. And so we're back with this project. And as you can see, I got the boards made. These ones I got through JLC PCB. When you're making boards, guys, and looking at doing these projects, shop around. I've found as of late that PCB Way are getting quite expensive for their boards, and these ones were as cheap, if not cheaper than PCB Way, when I turned around and got a price on it including freight. You know, the only downside is that for the 100 by 100 style boards, at JLC PCB you only get 5. At PCB Way you can get 5 or 10 for that price. But does it make it worth paying more? I don't know. I usually only want about 5 anyway, so that's what I've got. I've got 5 of these, and I got them in the purple because I like the purple. So I got that. I ordered in and got some bits and pieces. So I've got sockets, and in the sockets I've got, well, let's get all these bits out. Don't want those at this stage. So out of me sockets I've got 4 18 pin and 1 14 pin. Now I'm socketing it because if this runs 4 LVDs on here, and if the LVD falls over, if you solder it on, then you got to desolder it, solder a new one on, and the more times you may have to do that, the more likely you are to damage the tracks. So I find that put a socket in it, it sits away from the machine anyway, so all the parts are going to be away from it, not up against it. So I find that's fine. When you make a case, just make sure it's that little bit bigger for the sockets. We have some pin headers and sockets. So we have the 40-way sockets to go on the board. These are slightly more expensive ones. These are round, what they call round tuned sockets that I've got. You don't have to go with those. You can go with the standard dual wipe style square ones. So, but these are some I had, and then because I've also got the tuned pin header connectors that will go into the Raspberry Pi. And this is the pico they were talking about, which is the 2W. And you want the W because that is the wireless or for Wi-Fi built in. So that's the one you want. So these are the 2Ws. And then, so what we could do is we've got to solder those on there. And then the sockets we solder on the board, along with these other sockets. Then there's a resistor. There's a reset button here, and we can put one on. Then there's just the caps, the four decoupling capacitors to go on here, one resistor, and the header connector. Then we just have to program this, which is standard using the Arduino tools that I have on the PC, or if you want to, get yourself a Raspberry Pi and set it up as a programmer. It doesn't need to be a big fast one. I mean, you can get a Raspberry Pi 2 or a Raspberry Pi 3 or even an older 4 or newer 4 or a 5 or whichever one you want. Any of the alternatives, even just something that can run Raspberry Pi software on it, and then you can set it up as a programmer and then use it for programming all sorts of things. And you can use it for hooking up to the internet, downloading files you need, etc. They are an awesome little tool to use as a PC. This one's a Raspberry Pi 4B. It's not a huge amount of RAM, it's only 4 megs of RAM, but it's enough for what I need. This one I'm using for another project, but I'm setting it up with development for software for development for doing my C compiling and stuff like that on, that I want to use for another project. But I'll be using it for actually programming the picos and that as well. That's where we're up to. The other nice thing with this is actually a Wi-Fi module as well, so I don't need to network connect it up. I just have to finish setting it up, and I'm putting a wireless dongle in here for keyboard and mouse, etc. I've got to finish setting that up. I haven't done it yet, so it's something I need to get in and finish off. But for this one, we can use the PC, which is just over here, and just run a USB-C cable to it to program it. I do have the Arduino suite on the PC, so yeah, we can use that one for programming. Alright, so this is where we are. I will jump off, find that connector, and I'll grab the 4 decoupling caps. They're only 100 nano, so they're the 0.1 UFs. So I've got a pile of those. I'll grab those, and the resistor, I just have to have a look on the sheet and see what the resistor was. It's not, one thing that's not marked on here is that resistor value. But anyway, I will do that, and then we'll come back to it. Alright, so I'll see you soon. Alright guys, so here we are back on the bench. So the board, of course, the headers. Now what happened is, I'll just put my eyes on, when I cut these, one of these pins broke off, and I do have it as a spare pin. But then I thought, well, I'm pretty sure that they don't use all the pins on the pico that they use. And I had a look over it, and there's a couple of ends where it doesn't use them. It's only a 2-layer board, and it doesn't use them on either side. So I'm going to use the one which has got the missing one, so I don't have to waste it, on this one here, which doesn't use the pin at one end. So that's what I'm going to do with those. Those are the headers that go on my Pi. Now, one thing I found is unless you load these files up in a CAD program, there is no telling you what parts you're going to need if they're not written on the board. So I will do a BOM on here for you so you know what you need, or a bill of materials. And of course the caps are decouplers, which are 0.1 UF or 100 nano. The resistor is a 10k. Okay, so I'm going to do up a list of the bill of materials for you on here, and then you can, if you want to build one of these, order the boards, see who's the best price. You can either go PCB Way or JL PCB. Some of them charge for colour. If they're not green is the standard. Some of them charge you a colour fee. Just be aware of that if you want them in colour. See who's the cheapest. If you want them in green, I think it's JL PCB are the cheapest for them. Alright, but I've got all my header connectors. They're a 50 pin way header connector, so these are the ones I ordered when I was doing the Spectrum. And the Spectrum needed longer ones than these. They need 56 or something like that, I think. And these are 50. The Spectrum Video uses standard 50 way connectors, which is cool because that means I've got plenty of spares for what I need. And these are good gold plated ones, so these are good connectors. And the nice thing I tested one on here, and these connectors, when you put them in, they are really tight going in. It doesn't just fall down, so you actually have to push it in, which is really, really good, which is what I want. So then when I turn it over to solder it, it's not going to fall out. When you build these boards, the side which just has the SVI 3x8 pico expander, that's the side that goes to your PC. So when you plug it in, it goes that way. So that side has to have the edge connector in it. All your components go on the other side, which is the outside of the board. They don't go in. Otherwise this will never plug in, because everything will be too far forward for it. Alrighty. I don't know if there's a case for this. I didn't see one on his website. So if not, it is something we can play around with and design up a case for it. What I'm going to do is I am going to put this header connector in and then solder that in, because it doesn't sit out very far on the pin side on the board, so it doesn't interfere with the other ones going in that I have to solder from this side. The only ones that will be a little bit touchy is this inside edge of the pico and one of the level shifters, maybe a cap. But see, I can do those individually and then put the others on and solder them, so it's not an issue. So I still have plenty of room, so nothing's going to be in my way. So I'll do this now. I'll turn on the soldering iron and we will go through and solder this on. Right, so we'll get into it. Now you could put flux on this, but because this is a new board and it's basically lead tinned when they made it, it's what they call hassle. I don't think I need to put any on. Clean the iron and then it's just a bit of solder, I think. Okay, and that's got those. I used those 3 sockets stacked on top of each other to give me the height to stop this falling over. So I'm just going to use the magnifier just to check these connections, guys. Just give me a second. Yeah, they all look really nice under there. So next I want to do is this one. And if you check the silk screen and that, like if you have an issue like me, what you want to do is to check to find out if there's any that aren't used, and that one's not. The one down from it is, but that one's not. So with this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tin it while I hold it. And that's just to get it to stay there. And with this one here, he's used what's called a hand solder pad, which is a long wide pad. That's fine, but the problem is if you're working with boards with very close pins, you may find that you'll get a bridge because they'll be very close together. So it's just one thing to keep an eye on when you're designing boards, guys. I mean, it's no real issue so long as you know what you're doing and keep an eye on what you're actually doing. So I'm just pushing it from behind to make sure it's up against the board when I reflow the solder. And that's why I say I tack either end or across corners when it's a socket. So you can just heat it up and push it down to make sure it actually makes connection. And I'll spin this around. I should use my third hand to do this, but I just find pulling it out is more of a hassle than doing this. So it's my own fault if I muck it up. Right, so it's got that first one in. Now, a lot of you are going to say, well, how do you know that's straight and that the pico is going to fit in there? I'll show you. There's a little trick to doing that. The tuned pin sockets are not too bad. The square dual wipe sockets are a little bit different. They can be a little bit more of a problem to do. But I will show you how I get around that in a minute. So what we'll do is we'll do that one socket. That's going to be a little bit of a pain to do. So he's got the silk screen. Oh, I put that on the wrong side, guys. I've done exactly what I said I shouldn't do. Anyway, I was looking for the silk screen, then I've seen I put that one on the wrong side, so I'm going to have to desolder that. So to desolder it, I'll just use the soldering pump, because it should come off fairly easy with it being newly soldered on, so that should clean up and come off real easy. It's part of the problem when you talk and you're trying to do things at the same time. Yep, that's sitting down fine. Right. So why I want to do it this way is then I can solder along next to this and I don't damage it. Yep, that one's on fine. Yep. That'd be easy to get at the end there. So I think I'll just get the soldering gun and I'll just whip all those ones out. Right, so I think I'm going to have to replace the tip on that. It's not quite clearing all the solder out. So if they're not perfectly flat and they have a little bit of an edge to them, it sucks air rather than the solder. So what I'm going to do is I'll use the hot air to warm it up. Then it should come out. The other thing you could do is warm it up with hot air and then reuse the soldering gun. But if it's not probably pulling it out, then it's probably not going to do a very good job anyway. So I must put a new tip in that. It's not too bad. That's still the original tip from when I bought that, and that's a few years old now. I mean, the other thing I could do is use a bit of desoldering braid, because these are quite wide pads on here, so it would actually pick it up quite well. And I just realised that I had that on really low, because I was doing something. I had that on really low when I was trying to take something off some plastic, and I had it down on a very low heat. So I'll just reheat this back up again. I only had it on 100 degrees, which is not really going to do a hell of a lot. So we'll heat this back up, which shouldn't take too long. I'll try it again, and then if not, I will try some desoldering braid. That's better. Alright, let's give that a bit of a try and see if that wants to come out now. That end does. There might be the odd one or two. I think there's one there that doesn't really want to let go. So what we can do is just add a little bit of heat to this and give them another pull, and they should come straight out realistically. What we'll do is we'll do that. We'll just give it a just down this very end. There's a few there that just don't want to give up. And that, it is because they're quite a tight hole for these round tune pinned legs. So let's see if we come out now. Come up. No, they still don't want to give up. Well, obviously soldered them on too well. I mean, after this I can just try some braid on it to try and clean them up. Come up, come up. Well, you can pop those back down. These guys down here just don't want to let go. Down the very end here. That one fell out. You can slide that back in anyway, so there we go. Those are coming up now. Right, that's out. We can pop those back in. The only thing you got to make sure is that they are down properly. Put it on the surface, and then so these tools are good to get down in between them. Push down to make sure they're all flat. Yep, that's fine. So I can use that, and I'll just resolder it in on the other side. So looks pretty good. And that one is the one that goes to that. Is it that one? Just have to have a quick look here in a minute. Yep, it's that one down the bottom there. So that's one that doesn't have it on. But goes that way. Yep, that should be fine. Yeah, that'll solder in fine there. Right, I'll now get on to and do that one. through and solder these up now. There's only a couple that are right down by this edge connector that are going to make it hard to do. Those are the ones I'll do first. And that's that. So now the rest of those are easy to do. We're away from that edge connector. It'd probably be a bit easier with a finer tip. I could have used my rechargeable soldering iron, the little one I got. But sometimes you grab it and you're soldering with it and it runs out, and if you don't keep them charged all the time, you can run out when you want to use them. So the benchtop one's fine for me, and I'm used to using this big tip. The nice thing is too is with the tip like this, it gets a lot of heat into the connection, so you don't have to have it very long on the part to solder it in. Right, that's in there, that's all fine. Yep, that's cool. And so now we got that needs to go in there, so they can go in last. So I'll put the rest of these sockets on and we'll solder these in, and then I'll put all the other passives on, the capacitors, and then the other one of those, and the resistor. Oh, and the switch is the other thing I've got to find too. It's the other thing I haven't got just yet, it's the switch. But that's not a biggie. It's just a reset switch if you need to reset it. So, I mean, for now, if I wanted to, I'd just put something on there to short a jumper, and then just a pair of headers and a jumper, and then if I need to, I can just short the header pins to reset instead of pushing a switch. There's ways of doing things, so it just depends on how you want to do it. I will put a proper switch on it, but I just have to get one out. I'm just not sure I've got a 2-pin. I've got some 4-pin ones for circuit ports. It looks like the type of switch they're using on this is like the ones they have on the picos and that, and I don't think I've got anything like that. We'll find out. Yep, those all look good. Drop the resistor on now. Now if you keep resistor legs, you can hang on to them. I don't tend to because I have a lot of wire floating around that I can use. Right, so we've got that one extra connector to go on, the reset, and the other edge connector, which is this one. And that one's got all the pins on it, so that one can go on as it is. And now we've got all the sockets and everything on there. This sits a lot better, so we don't have to worry about putting anything under the corner. So we'll now go along, and I'll do the same as I normally do. I will mark one end And then I'll do the other to make sure that is sitting down. And then I just heat it up and give it a little push. Just be careful not to burn myself. That's the problem, is the heat goes through these pins real quick. Yep, and that's all done. Right. Right, and that's all done. Once you get proficient at this, it doesn't take long to solder stuff in. And as I'm saying, I find with a slightly bigger tip, I can put more heat in, so I'm quicker to solder. So we'll now put the caps in, and these are just filtering caps, so they filter out all the high frequency noise. 2, 3, 4, 5. And these caps I buy online. Most stuff these days comes through China, and I buy them in a big pack of multi sizes, and there's generally like about 50 or 100 of each value. I pull a couple out of the bag and I check them, put them on the meter to check them to see if they're within spec, and if they are, they go into my drawer. And I'll show you that. I don't know if I've shown you the drawers I've got. These are a little bit wider than the holes, but it doesn't matter, because this will be going in a case and you're not going to see them anyway. They'll sit down there alright. But I'll show you those drawers after I've done this. These are for slightly wider spacing, these ones. The ones they must use on here are tiny wee things. And the tiny wee footprint on them. But what I can do is, the wires are fairly soft, so you can actually get them to lean one way. Could also use a pair of flat nose pliers that are non-serrated and do them that way. But I think this will be fine, do I not? This will be fine. I mean, it's just something to look at, is that it's just the size of those caps are quite, the foot spacing is actually quite small compared to standard ceramics. So yeah. One down. Let me just get out of there and open it up so it doesn't fall out. Right, I'll solder those on. And I'm just going to tag one on each so they don't fall out and end up on the table and then on the floor, and I've got to try and bind them. So I'm just going to tag one of each leg. And the other thing with that too is I can actually make sure they're actually sitting where I want them to sit. They'll be alright, yeah. Be alright. Yeah. They're not as perfectly straight, but as I said, the footprint's a little bit small. It may have been because of the board when he was doing it, and he's just a bit worried that he'd be running into other tracks. But we can deal with it. Right, so it's done. I'll just snip those off. And of course the other thing I do too is, I haven't done it yet, is run over the tops of these ends when I've cut them. And that just makes it a tidier join. Make sure I don't leave any bits of metal behind. And that's why you always clean up with a bit of flux too when you're finished. So just in case you have got a stray pin sitting on your board that's sitting in a bit of flux, it will actually clean it off. Those are all okay. So the only thing I really need to do is sort out a switch for that and do this. Now, as I was saying, how to put these in when you're doing it like this if you haven't got a proper socket to go in. Well, work out which way around you want these. Generally you want the long pins to go in to your socket. And the short ones with the little round pedestal on them, I will call it, they go to your board. And one good thing with doing it that way is that it allows an air gap, so there's a bit of heat can dissipate through that, and that's why you do that. So what I do is I put those in, I get me pie, make sure it's the right way round, and then I sit it on top. Brace this side, and then you solder the pins on. Then it is exactly lined up for that socket. And that's how I do them. It's way easier than trying to solder them on the pie and then try and make it fit. And you're having to bend things and maybe break pins or pads or something like that. So that's how I do it. Alright guys, that's the way you put them on. So I will find something to brace this corner up with, and then I will solder that on. Then we've just got to find the 4 chips to go into here. Once that's all in there, I will take this off, because we can't program it on here, because the other logic on here interferes with the pins. So we've got to take this off, and then we program it on the PC, and then we can drop it back on here. I can't test it right at this second. We may have to do a part 2 to this, and you might be already watching that now, depending on how long this is. And then we can check it all out on a part 2 on a real Spectra video. Try her out and see how she works. Sounds cool. Alright, so I will see you then. I will just sort out something to hold this up so I can solder it, and I'll find these other chips out of my stash first, and then I'll come back to you. And I'll try and find a switch too, and then I'll come back to you. Alright, hey guys, so there we go, part 1. I thought it might be a little bit long, so sorry about that. We're going on to part 2 when it comes up, and we finish this off, program the pico and plug it into a 328. There's also, you may have seen, I put up on there is an update in the firmware, and it now has hard drive capability in the firmware. Remember, this is still cutting edge stuff, so there may be a few finicky things with it. But keep an eye on the repository and see how that goes. I will be. Unfortunately, when I did the videoing, it came out the day after, so it was like, oh, really? But never mind, we will download the new version, and that's the one we will be putting on. So guys, hopefully you're enjoying this, a bit of new tech for a piece of old tech, and hopefully we'll have a nice working machine. It's still not 100% a 605, and that I think they are working on, or it's able to read and write files, but you've got to have it hooked up to a PC. It would be nice if they used a larger Pi, something with maybe 16 megs of RAM in it, and made a hard drive inside there, and you can dump stuff onto that, and you only need that. You don't need the Wi-Fi for dumping in files. Nice idea, but we'll see how we go. Anyway guys, thanks for hanging around and coming along on the trip. As I said, next video, more shenanigans in the 328 area. So, have a great day. Have a great week, and it's Easter here too. No, I'm not eating chocolate. And until next time, ciao.